the Saquon news. And to me, I love it. I love it. I'm smiling ear to ear. It's another typical Howie move. It's a no-brainer for me for so many reasons. One, it's the obvious move, right? This guy's the most important Philadelphia Eagle on either side of the ball, right? This guy is your identity on offense. He made Jalen Hurts better. He made your offensive line better, your wide receivers better, everyone better. He is the reason why you win that Super Bowl, essentially. I know the defense was outstanding, but he is a huge catapulting reason to get this team over the hump. And you set the tone now. Like, you don't have to pay him a year down the road, 2 years down the road. You set the market price for this guy. You have a happy employee, a deserving employee to get the extension, and now you're ready to get back to work. I think it's absolutely genius. I think there's no reason not to do it. I know he's already under contract, so yeah, you say, screw it. You just keep him under contract. There's no reason. But that's not how championship level teams operate, right? It's clear how the Eagles operate, and this is how they do things, Gil. So I think it's another Howie type of move, which is a home run.
A lot there, right? Listen, you can certainly poke at it from all the angles and say he gave you the best season that he's ever given you. You're not topping that year. I mean, if you do, then you really are getting your bang for your buck.
He gave us over 2,000 yards. So I mean, we're not saying much with that, right? Just because he may not ever have that year, right?
Oh, I get it. I'm saying,
yeah.
So you're paying him for a past performance. You had to some point say, listen, I already paid him for the best year that he's ever gotten. I'm going back to the Hassan Reddick deal. He gave you 18 and a half sacks. You didn't go to Hassan Reddick and say, hey, man, you got 18 and a half sacks. Let me give you more money.
That's not apples. That's not apples to apples, and you know that. I mean, it's a fair, thing to bring up, but it's not even close. They're not even in the same stratosphere. Hassan Reddick's value compared to Saquon Barkley's value in those given years. Wouldn't you agree with that?
No, I wouldn't. I mean, you got edge rusher is way more prioritized than running back. Would you agree with that?
If I'm getting that type of value and impact from Saquon, and you also look at what the Eagles already have on defense, no, absolutely not. I mean, listen.
You don't think that teams look at the draft? Teams will draft an edge rusher in the top 5 in the draft. They're not drafting a running back in the top 5.
Absolutely. Edge rusher is extremely important, but I'm looking at as it relates to this Eagles team, right? And you look at the historic year that Saquon just had and his impact.
My point is, you had
the separation there. That's
the separation point. Is this? Well, I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, Saquon had a more impactful year than Reddick did. But Reddick played a position that they value more, and they didn't approach him and say, hey, you had 18 and a half sacks. Let me give you more money. No, they said, we got the best year that we could get out of this guy. He's not going to top that. The next year he did not top that, and then they traded him away.
Right. But so a couple things there, and all fair, more than fair points. Just because someone may have already given you the best season statistically, does that mean you shouldn't go ahead and do what the Eagles just did? Right. I would say that's how poor employers operate. Right? Like, good employers operate how the Eagles operate, and that is
listen, as a
exactly what they just did.
As a business decision, we all yearn for the place of employment to approach you and appreciate you. But my point is that's not normal. Now, the Eagles should be applauded for that, 100%. I'm not going to rip the Eagles for doing right by their employee. But my point is, in the past, they've had the opportunity to do this, and they did not do it with Hassan Reddick. He had an equivalent year. I mean, 18 and a half sacks is a monster season. And they didn't say, hey, you deserve more money. They let him basically play for under market value. Now, they approached Saquon Barkley after a 2,000-yard season, which is historic. I get it. And it's a situation where he's 28 years old. You had him for 2 more years. Did you not want to follow him up the next year and see if he still was on that same level before you made a decision? Now, I'm not saying they deserve to be ripped here. I'm just looking at the other side of this. Of this, to me, we're getting text message all day of people scratching their heads. Why would they approach him? Why would they do this? They didn't have to sign. It's like the Embiid thing. Why'd you sign Embiid? You didn't have to sign Embiid. Why'd you do this? Well, the organization did right by Embiid. They're getting ripped for it.
Yeah. I think that's, let's not put Embiid and Saquon in the same sentence either, right? Right. Saquon's coming off a Super Bowl win. And you also look at his value as it relates to this offense, and you look at his value as it relates to Jalen Hurts. I think that's enough said right there. And it's a gamble, right? Anytime you give a player an extension, it's always a gamble. Life in professional sports, particularly from the front office perspective, it's a gamble, right? Whether it's the draft, free agency, extensions, trades, etc. We all know that. Anyone listening to this conversation, right, and understands that. That's part of it. So yeah, we may look back on this and sort of shake our heads and say, you know what, that was a Howie swing and a miss. But I think a lot would have to transpire that would surprise us, MG. Like, Saquon Barkley just turned 28 years old. Saquon Barkley is well known as one of, if not the hardest working NFL players on the planet, right? Like, you trust his work, you trust his process, you trust what you've seen this past year in the building every day and his value to this locker room. And you say, you know what? We're actually going to take a little bit of a risk now, and it's going to end up being a saving cost in a year or two. That's how
And
I'm
it
looking at it.
and it could. I'm not
Right.
disagreeing with that. I'm sure if they approached him to do this, they feel like they're getting some financial benefit somewhere along the line in some
Yeah.
capacity here. But I go back to, like, hey, we're praising Roseman for approaching him and giving them this deal when they didn't have to. And in the same breath, we rip the Sixers for doing the same thing, approaching their guy when they didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
And by the
But
way, the Sixers essentially did it for the same reason, so they could have some
mhm.
financial flexibility because his contract number would be lower if they gave him a 3-year extension as opposed to a 4 or 5-year extension had they not approached him when they did.